It's misappropriation without a deeper understanding of the culture or the society that is associated with that particular word, because Athena, for example, is a Greek word. It's connected to a different place to the word Isis. You can't put the two together because they're from different areas, different regions completely. People make mistakes. They'll talk about Morrigan as if it's a person. And yet it's two words in Irish. It's mor, which is big, and re, which is sovereignty. So what are we talking about there? We're talking about a big land.
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do with some very skinny, big-breasted woman with a black cloak on and a raven on her fucking shoulder who's called a goddess of battle. Let's not even go there, because it's just too unbelievable and ridiculous. And yet it serves people sitting in their lounge room, watching their TV, thinking in some way, if they light a candle, that they're doing a ritual, and that in some way that makes them special. And I know that sounds sarcastic, but I've seen it. You know it goes.
It's everywhere.
But it's a form of extension from Christianity.
Yeah.
Because it almost performs the same kind of ritual. Let's light the candles, let's light the incense, etc. Despite the fact that it's sort of like Christianity's taken all its cathedrals, all its architecture from Kabbalah.
Yeah. It's also a separation though, isn't it?
It's a very unfortunate pale person, privileged pale person behavior. Because I was in there for a while, I know.
Yeah.
I know how it goes. And yet there's still the background person that says, this is fucked.
Yeah.
Am I playing this game? Let me go further into it and do it in a way that's somehow valid. But until the time I'm going, I can't do this anymore, because it's another hierarchy. It's another idea of divisionism. It's got a god and it's got a goddess. That's the only difference between that and Christianity. And there really is nothing. And then there's all these rules like do as you will, err and harm none. If you kill a beast to eat, there's harm. You can't live that way. That's again a goody fucking two shoes behavioral phenomenon. Each person will form an opinion based on what they want, and then they can enforce that as a rule and a law. I've seen it happen so many times, and they'll form all these rules and laws around it. Even within Wicca, for example, in the actual ritual initiation, the words say, may your weapons turn against you should you break this your most sacred oath. What kind of fucking nastiness is that? And besides that, even within that particular ideology, cult, is the idea of sticking a dagger in a chalice and saying, as man is to woman. That implies violence as far as I'm concerned. And what is a person in a second floor flat doing with a double-edged dagger anyway? And good on them if they know how to use it. But do they know the ramifications of what will happen if they stab somebody who comes into their house and they get caught? They're going to be the ones to go to prison for it. So can you hear what I'm saying? People don't follow the steps.
No. Yeah, they take the bits they like the look of.
They seem to accept what gives a caricature,
status,
or a costume,
yeah,
over the top of that which was invented by Gerald Gardner in 1950s. And a similar thing happens with the idea that Jesus forgave Mary Magdalene for being a prostitute. She became his greatest disciple, whatever. But even in many books, like by Eileen Pagel, she talks about her being the apostle of apostles, and upon whom this church is made. Whereas according to Christianity, it was Peter. And you know what Peter means, don't you?
No.
The rock.
The rock's by the rock, yeah, where the church was built on, yeah.
With this particular book, the same with several others. This is why I'm just going to go into that, but attempt to make it in such a way as it's not going to turn the person off turning the next page.
Yeah, it's got to be relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no pointing any fingers. There's just write the history. That is an alternative history to the history we're given.
Yeah.
Now, we're given history by the conquerors. So in my entire life, I wanted to know the contrary of what history said. I wanted to know about the conquered people. I wanted to know who they were, what the relationship was, how on earth the people could be conquered, what's the use of force, how is it actually done? And it's done inevitably, initially by bullets and beads, by seduction, trade, pull you in, next thing, hit you with an atomic bomb.
It's happening now, isn't it?
You can see the way it's done,
Yeah.
because it's still being done. And it's also rather interesting because you can still see, like I walked through Melbourne and past the Treasury, and it's got all the pillars, and I was with my granddaughter, and she asked about the pillars, and I said, oh, it's Rome. And the understanding that you can also tell a society's beliefs or ideology by its architecture. For example, think of Washington and that stele. Initially, from my research, most of the standing stones are navigational. They give direction.
Yeah.
They're not sacred stones. Fuck all those words off. You hear those words and how they've affected the mind. Okay. Words like sacred, holy, all these words have affected the consciousness. Many of these standing stones across the Isle of Man, Gibraltar, Malta, Ireland, the Outer Hebrides, all across Albion, all across Ireland, they're all, France, you name it, they're all, most of them stand singularly. But as a lot of the material I've read says, if you look between two of the stones, you'll see a mountain peak. So you head in that direction. So these are directional songs or learning that would have been known about orally, and the information of navigation held by the Brown judges or by the Druids, and that was taken from town to town and explained to people so they could find their way wherever they were going. Wherever there's a circle, it's a closed system. Wherever there's no circle, it's an open system. What's interesting about these standing stones and their height in the majority of places is that initially all these countries were covered in forest. So you didn't know where you were going, and in difference to like Hansel and Gretel, you didn't know where you were going unless you could see a tall peak. You went, that's what my mother told me. Now, if I follow that tall peak, it's going to take me to Avery, for example. What the church did was to create spires that are higher. So they became the directions that were, and in the middle of Melbourne, for example, I know where Clifton Hill is because I can see the spire. Now, this is how the manipulation of architecture can alter a people concerned. The idea also that was raised up, and I know this is a little bit off topic, that was raised up by a man called Gleick, who wrote Chaos Theory, and then later he wrote a book called Faster. He talks about the physiology or the psychology of a people who are savanna people by nature. So we're looking out over vast distances towards the horizon, but when the Otis Elevator Company created the little doodad dial above the elevators, we start looking up. And when we start looking up, final brain says the predators are above us. Okay. And statues are always built higher than the eye level. So we've got to look up. This idea of looking up affects the primitive brain and puts us in a position of subservience.
Yeah.
You don't find statues of prominent people at ground level, do you?
No, you don't.
Masonic orders never let themselves be known about until well and truly into the 20th century. And even then, they keep a lot of secrets. That's another story.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd like to go into that a bit more, but that's a whole other conversation, isn't it?
But the Masonic orders are the ones who hold the information about the building of the square, as the same with the arch. And in many biblical texts, the same as in many mystical texts, particularly all through the Middle Ages, the idea of the capstone at the very top of the arch, that's what supports the arch. And the arch is one of the strongest structures known to humanity. It's the same shape as a cone-shaped dwelling. A cone-shaped dwelling, which are all over Africa and would have been our original homes, were round homes that went up into an arch. So that's the strongest structure. Instead of that, we've been given square houses that are going to fall down. So where do we go from here? Anywhere? Or do you want to give it?
I feel like I've just got so much to do. I've got so much to unpack and to look into more, because I know fuck all. With this, I'm just so like, and I'm really glad we've had this conversation, because it feels like what you talk about is that like finding the baseline, and but I could be finding that for quite a while, I think, because there's so
That's
much to
difficult.
learn.
Yeah, because I've been reading this stuff for over 40 years.
Yeah,
So that makes it difficult for you
yeah,
because you have, I mean, the bibliography in the back of Magdalene, I've also read the bibliographies of those books,
wow,
and I've had to sort out what to put in there. It's a madness, but it's a life's work
mm,
to be able to look for patterns, but not make stuff up,
yeah,
to keep within the discipline of not going too far out there. I don't want this to be a fictional story. It can look like a fictional story,
mm,
but as such, what it is mythos, the threads from all of that bibliography,
mm,
which is where the information comes from. The ability to join the dots as a writer, that's the only place where my skill comes in. To be able to have it be palatable to a reader. But I don't want to underestimate or insult anyone who reads it by being a lousy writer or wanting someone to believe, you know what I think of that word, to believe what I've written. It's go to the bibliography, and it's almost like prove me wrong. If in comes the person who said, no, you're wrong, I want to know the basis of their theory.
uh-huh,
I want to know the basis of their flat statement. I want to know the basis of their comment. Can they give me the information that says I'm absolutely incorrect in this instance? If they can't do that, that means they've got a bias, and that bias may very well be religious or ideological. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Shall we finish it there? Because we've got a night on
We've got,
tonight.
we have got another one soon, haven't we?
So
Thank,
I'll see you tonight about
can we
7:30.
do this again though?
Absolutely. Whenever you're ready.